The DC chapter of Pratham USA, headed by Ramesh Mahalingam, hosted its second annual fundraiser gala on October 27 in McLean, Virginia. The keynote speech was delivered by Arvind Subramanian. The guest speakers included Congressman Joseph Crowley. Here are some highlights from the fundraiser.
I'm Neeraj Vora. I'm one of the board members of the Pratham DC chapter, and it's my privilege to welcome everybody here tonight. Welcome. As a matter of fact, I'm told that she actually flew in directly from Chicago just in time to be the MC of this event. So with that, Sheila, I'm going to ask you to come up and MC the event.
I can't believe it's just the second annual Pratham Gala. Just a year ago was our first ever Pratham Gala in the Washington, D.C. area. And we had such an incredibly successful evening, thanks to each and every single one of you that takes the time, the trouble, the energy to spend your Sunday evening with us. I would first like to call on the stage Mr. Devithray, Chairman-elect of Pratham USA.
A few months after meeting with Madhav here in, in New York City, my wife and I happened to be in India, and we spent a day with him visiting Balwadis in Pune, schools in rural areas on the way from Pune to Bombay, schools where Pratham volunteers were working. We also visited a school in a Bombay slum. We also visited a computer lab in Andheri. At the end of the day, we were pretty tired, but blown away by the fact that all of this work that we had seen was being done by volunteers. And I tell you, that hooked us to the whole idea of Pratham. And this evening, I would like you to be hooked too. We are a low-cost, volunteer-driven organization. Volunteerism is in our DNA. We work through anywhere between 40 to 60,000 volunteers in India. We work out of borrowed premises. We do not invest in bricks and mortar. We work hard to make sure that 96%, fully 96% of the funds we receive go to help those little brains become bigger brains in India. All our fundraising efforts, everything this evening, for example, is the work of volunteers.
I would next like to introduce Congressman Joseph Crowley, who's of course a friend of India.
I was asked to say a few quick words tonight about the U.S.-India relationship and where I think it is going. I suspect that my thoughts might be similar to Arvind's. Personally, I think the U.S.-India relationship is rock solid, as long as we make sure we mind the gaps. As an Irishman discussing India, you might not expect me to quote the British. And it might seem strange to quote the London Underground subway, but it's applicable in this case. Our security relationship is strong and growing stronger by the month. Our trade relationship is broadly balanced. Our people-to-people ties could hardly be stronger. And the exchange of ideas between our two countries moves almost faster than the internet itself. But still, the gaps are there. I have worked hard to keep the India caucus as the largest single country caucus in Congress. And your voice is critical. You can clap for that. And your voice is critical to ensuring that we stay informed on issues like literacy and learning in India. I have enjoyed my relationship with the Indo-American community in Congress these past 15 years. This is not a retirement statement. But I don't know how much longer I'll be chair of the India American Caucus in the House of Representatives. When I first was the chair some 10 or so years ago, I kind of joke around about the fact that I was on my way to become the chair of the Irish Caucus. I saw the flag furled. It was orange, white, and green. Both countries begin with I. Both countries were subjugated by the British. Partition. We can go on, Doctor. And very much so, we have a shared history in terms of immigration to this great country. The Irish themselves were not unknown in our history for bigotry towards Irish America. And as much as that is a concern for present-day Indo-America, it's one to be mindful of, but not to overwhelm us as well. We've seen the advancements of the Indo-American community, both Democrat and Republican, throughout this land. One of, if not the most successful ethnic minority communities in the United States today. And as much as there is to be concern for our children and your children, there's much to celebrate as well. Just two last statements. Keep on having faith in America. She'll never let you down. And when all else fails, always blame the British. Thank you.
I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker, Arvind Subramaniam.
I've been asked to speak on the Indian economy, the role of education, and Pratham. And let me begin with the bad news. I think the bad news is that, the Indian economy is in a bit of a funk over the last, I would say, at least 2 years. For about 10 years, we were, growing gangbusters, and people were kind of linking us, coupling us with China. It was always, China, India growing at these torrid rates of growth. And what we've seen in the last 2 years that growth has really slowed down considerably. In fact, if you were in India in the last 2 days, the hot issue is the price of onions. It's at 100 rupees a kilogram, and it's really, inflation has been very high for a very long time. And so not just has growth come down, the rupee went down from about 52 to 68 before it recovered again. And many of us who've invested in India had some anxious moments. For many days, we thought the Indian rupee could go much further. I think the other thing that we need to recognize is that, it's always good to have China out there, as a kind of threat, as a model, as a source of inspiration on, how much we need to do. And just to give you a couple of numbers, or just one number, in the field of education, for example, leave aside, the roads that China has built, the power it has, all the things that work, the high-speed trains, everything that you read about China, which is actually quite true. Leaving all that aside, even in the field that we're kind of discussing today, The Economist had a piece last year which said that China, in terms of adult literacy, is almost 30 years ahead of India. So we are today where China was 30 years ago in terms of education and literacy. And in health, it's actually even worse. So we have a long way to go to catch up if we have to become the kind of world power that Indians and Indian leaders aspire to be. So we're a long way away from that, and in the last 2 years things look particularly gloomy for India. So that's the bad news. I think I don't want this to become a tale of kind of unremitting gloom, because there is a lot of good news in India, and I see this through the lens of a narrow economist, and even through that narrow lens I can say there are a couple of things, or 2-3 things, that we should be very hopeful about. I think one of the things is that if you look at India from a perspective of New Delhi, things look bad, slow moving, bureaucratic, obstacles being thrown up. governance challenges, corruption scandals, you could really come away feeling very unhappy about India. But if you go down to the level of the states, a lot is happening. It's not just the success of Gujarat, which has been which everyone knows about. Gujarat has been growing like China. It's done very well. But even if you go to one of the states that, Rukmini was in Bihar, for example, the Chief Minister Nitish Kumar has really, turned things around quite remarkably over the last 5 to 7 years. And there are stories in New Delhi. The Chief Minister has done a great job. In the state of Chhattisgarh, there are things that work very well. In Madhya Pradesh as well, social indicators have done very well. So there are, if you go around India, lots of, hopeful experiments, hopeful experiences. And the good news, the way to think about India more and more is you should think of India as it's very much like the United States, very decentralized, and you have this very healthy competition between states dynamic that's building up. If one state does well, no longer can others say, well, that's one-off, can't be done. I think there's pressure on the other states to perform. And the way that's happening in India is this. In the last 2 election cycles, or at least 2 or 3, more and more governments that do well are being re-elected. So we have a situation, and these are early signs yet, we have the tantalizing possibility that good economics and good governance can become good politics. Because I think one thing we have to accept about India, and this is something that American audiences must understand, is that the private sector can be a part of the solution. It can never be the solution. For many, many things in India, like health, education, infrastructure, the government still has to be a big part of the solution. And in that respect, NGOs like Pratham are crucial because they not only deliver these things on their own, but they work with the government, create capacity in the government, because ultimately the scale of India's challenges are so big that government has to be a big part of that, and NGOs like Pratham a key ingredient in that.
I would now like to introduce the person I've spoken about for the last couple of minutes, Ramesh Mahalingam. Ramesh?
We meet a lot of remarkable people actually when we work with Pratham in different places in the country. And we find that we're always meeting people who are very like-minded, and we learn a lot from them, and we find that we're able to do a lot together. And in this room, there are a few people actually who have been really involved with us in this journey. So Pratham, last year, some of you were at the last year's gala. We always talk about the monies that we raised. I think that's certainly one metric we're always happy to share. But we also want to, like Arvind and Sheila and others mentioned, and Denny mentioned, we always want to talk about outcomes and measurements. Pratham is really a very low-cost, effective charity. With the monies that we raised in Pratham DC last year, we managed to impact 20,000 kids back in India, 20,000 children. Now, this year, our target is to really support about 25,000 children. So I'm sure that with your support, we'll make it possible. And with that, I would like to thank you all for coming here and turn it back to Sheila.
The Global Big Data Conference is taking place in McLean, Virginia from November 15th through 17th. The Janney Foundation fundraiser is on Sunday, November 16th. Please check out our What's On page at AsianOcean.com for more information on these and a whole lot of other events happening in the capital area. Thank you for watching Amazing Asian Television this week. Join us again next week for more entertainment. Until then, I'm Rosie Parajuli. Happy watching.